Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So here we are on a Thursday afternoon. Let's go straight to Zemi Ikotny. Here's what the Daily News is saying today. Our view, make military buildup mutually beneficial. Now, when you see mutually beneficial, you think there has to be more than one party there. And, of course, this is kind of the way the separatists like to do it. They like to say, well, you know, there's the military on one side and then the people on the other side. And they will go to great lengths to expand on that duopoly. I, once upon a time, was asked to give a short speech at the university. I guess they didn't have anybody else to fill the gap. And on this very phenomenon. And my guidance was that the words but and are the real key words. Perhaps the most important words that you could use when there's a choice involved. Compare the difference between the military buildup is coming. The military is going to spend a lot of money here, but we got to make sure that our environment is protected. That's sentence number one. Here's sentence number two. The military's buildup is coming, and the military is going to spend a lot of money here, and we got to make sure that our environment is protected. Quite a difference, isn't there? Quite a difference in the connotation between number two and number one. The separatist would always stick a but in there. Anytime somebody says anything about the military that might be interpreted as at least slightly favorable, it's obligatory that it be followed with the word but. But they never asked us. But they won't let us come into our ancestral lands that we haven't given a darn about for the last 100 years. But now that the military is clearing it, we're very interested. So here's the editorial. Conversations and arguments about Guam's political relationship with the United States have long been the source of some of the community's greatest long-standing debates. Opponents of the military buildup on Guam have taken their voices to the highest international levels, speaking out at the United Nations, demanding a place at the table of self-determination. These individuals and organizations and coalitions have argued at length to oppose the construction of live firing ranges and facilities that will no doubt have untold consequences on the degradation of Guam's natural environment and precious resources. Of course. You have to say that.
Only there.
Yeah. We applaud these individuals and organizations as their work and activism have forced our federal counterparts to reevaluate how they will build and implement their military realignment strategies. Because ultimately, what works for the military also must work and be safe for Guam. But as the U.S. military and the federal government move full speed ahead with billions of dollars in strategic plans to establish a greater military presence, as many as 5,000 military personnel, perhaps it's time to shift our focus towards securing Guam as much as possible from this partnership. How about $1 billion in COVID relief funds. Wouldn't that be a good start?
Did they turn the other cheek on their butt?
Yeah. We can't forget that the Wuhan virus ravaged our tourism sector. Millions of dollars in military-related spending continued, with hundreds of millions more federal dollars flowing into the bank accounts of Guamanians who quickly found themselves without jobs and incomes to pay their bills and feed their families. Well, this spending has been and will continue to be a lifeline for our economy. We must do all we can to ensure that the military buildup occurring around us is safe for everyone, whether you live off base or behind the fence. This military buildup has been in the works for more than a decade. Hundreds of millions in construction of the Marine Corps base Camp Blas have already been invested, with just $100 million in construction. Can you read the end of the column on the hard copy, Jose?
The debates and activism can march on, and they must. But in the meantime, we also must consider how to create jobs and pay the bills for Guam's struggling, working families.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Sabina Parises and all the sustainable Guam folks, passer, quarterback, her name escapes me here for the second, Shelton, Amanda Shelton, and her brother out at the university with Sustainable Guam would all have us believe that we really don't need the military. We just need to develop a sustainable island, more agriculture and less dependence on imported foods, and then we'd be okay. It just doesn't make any sense at all. We really, really need the military. And because we have the military, if you've traveled around any of the other islands in this part of the world, any of the other countries in this part of the world, you see what a big difference it's made. The military has been a pretty good neighbor over the years. Now, we still have some bad feelings going back to the pre-1950 days of martial law. But come on, that's 72 years ago. We kind of need to move into the future here. And to me, it's not a settled matter that our tourist industry will ever come back. And I've made that prediction before, that we may never get back to the good old days of tourism here on Guam, like we had in 2019, where we brought in 1.6 million visitors from mostly from Japan and Korea. That may never happen. The military may be the best that we could get.
What's interesting is that they started this article, or this op-ed, saying that the opponents of military buildup have taken their voices to the highest international levels, speaking out at the United Nations, a group of nations with very strong militaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you think they're still nations?
Yeah. And of course, the highest echelons, not to mention the United States Congress, of course, which is the only place that really makes sense. Now, I mentioned the other day when in one of our conversations with a caller, that we are not selling our island as well as we could. We want to be grouped with the rest of the territories. We want to go back to this insular cases BS, how poorly we've been treated because of the insular cases. We may have a rule that every word must have the word colonialism, settler, and colonizer in it. Do what we can to pick fights with the national government, etc. Talk about being independent, and it doesn't work at all. My sense is we should make this thrust. We should not say we're just like the other territories, because we're not. We're not like the Virgin Islands. We're not like American Samoa. We're grossly different from Puerto Rico. But we have something that they don't have, and that is that we have this large defense installation here. So our pitch ought to be this: what you do that's good for Guam is good for America, because a strong Guam, a vigorous, healthy prosperous population on your outpost in the Western Pacific benefits you just as much as it benefits us. So straighten out this compact impact mess. You did a good thing with reimbursing us for unearned income tax that we don't have to pay anyhow. But that's the kind of steps you should take, Uncle Sam, to strengthen the economy of this island so that we're strong. And if we're strong, you'll be strong. That's the pace we should take. But it's not anywhere near as satisfying to the separatists as constantly bitching about how bad the country of the United States is. All right, that's it for Demi Ekotny for today. We got a really short card. People just aren't fighting with one another enough. And of course, I've got Paul Zerzan and systemic racism on the card. I've got the classified pages, Public Law 36-34. I have Clint versus Mike Mateo, Ethics Commission versus the Open Government Law, and Troy versus the Neocat. So it's a pretty thin calendar, and I could probably loosen the reins a little bit if people want to stray away from the card and talk about other things that they find interesting. You could always give it a shot, and we'll see how it works out. But before I plunge into the card, I have a call from R. James, who wants to talk about the buildup. Go ahead, R. James.
Afternoon, Bob.
Hiya.
Got a scenario for you.
Go ahead.
Let's say that our separatist aficionados, they're just shoveling this hockey around all over the place. And let's say that the Department of Defense just gets tired of it and throws up their hands and says, okay, guys, you win. We're not going to do the buildup. We're just going to stop right where we're at. And maybe we're going to see if we can do something with our future buildup in other locations that are more friendly. Okay. Well, when the Chinese landing craft are skipping through the Philippines and headed down towards Japan on the way to here, and if we've got some North Korean missiles that are headed our direction, I don't think that the separatist aficionados are going to be able to stand up in front of the Chinese and whoever else might be aligned with them and say, hey, look, guys, we didn't want to have anything to do with the United States. We're just, we want to be on our own.
Yeah, come here and see our dances that we've been doing since 1980, and
right.
And we'll teach you about the Chamorro culture and everything like that. And the Chinese and the North Koreans will say, oh, we didn't know. Okay, we'll leave you alone.
Hey, I just don't think the Chinese are going to say, oh, hey, sorry for the inconvenience. You guys carry on, and we're just going to go around you. And no, I just can't believe that these people are so short-sighted that they don't understand that it's probably not an if, it's more likely a when. Whoever the Chinese and whoever's aligned with them are going to try to make, their moves on Taiwan, and then it's going to, filter south from there. I just can't believe that these people are this. Do I dare say ignorant? I mean, yeah, I'm going to say it. How can these people be so ignorant? I mean,
well, here's a partial answer to that, R. James, and that is that amongst the separatists, the understanding that international geopolitical considerations don't apply here because of the Chamorro culture. So if the United States were to haul the flag down here next 4th of July and say, okay, Zap, you guys are independent, how long would it take before Chinese diplomatic and commercial interests would move in, and that prized sovereignty would become nothing more than words on paper in a very short period of time?
Because if they got what they wanted, and the United States, quote unquote, said, okay, we're pulling out, you guys are independent, you can come back in and you can apply for status and, to be able to have us accept whatever kind of passport you're going to print. like freely associated status or something like that. I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to print our own. We're going to start printing our own rock money and printing our own passports and have quote unquote international sovereignty status. All the banks that are covered under the FDIC, they'll be closed so quick it'll make your head spin. All of the businesses that are here because they like the idea of being in the United States and having United States laws that don't come from dictatorist, type of countries, they're going to very quietly start making plans to pull the plug and get out of here too. What's going to be left? Not anything of any consequence, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, that's what they really want. Maybe we should, I don't know, do it again. Do I dare say, should we just give up and let them have it? I don't know.
Well, I let's hang on as long as I'm around. I like living. I like living here. I think this is the most fantastic place in the world to live. I wrote a piece once upon a time about being a third-class citizen. You may have heard me read it on the air. Yep. And I am a third-class citizen, but I love every minute of it. Having the ability to live here in the heart of the Chamorro culture under the flag that I treasure above all else, it doesn't get any better than that.
No, we have, for all of the crying and whining and everything that everybody in these certain circles is doing, we really have one of the best circumstances that you could have. Sit down and slice it, paper thin, and analyze each one of those slices, and we have got extraordinary latitude and benefits. So, yeah, I don't know. Mom and Dad, when I brought Dad back when he got cancer, and we've been back here for all of these years now. I was over in CNMI for 12 years, but how bad do these people really want to make it before everybody looks up and goes, oh, wow, we made a wrong turn back there 20 miles back. We need to go back to where we were before. I think they're just whining to have something to whine about. Because hold on, let me put on my Dr. Fauci. They're not looking at the science of the situation, because if they did, they would cut those layers really thin, and they would analyze each layer, and they'd go, wow, our tax status, wow, our associations, wow, the privileges and freedoms that we have that we wouldn't have if we had aligned with Japan or with any other country, the taxes that we don't have to pay, et cetera. It just goes on and on and on. Yeah, I don't see what they're whining about other than to just, be making noise.
Can't say that I don't agree with you on every point there. R. James, thanks a lot for calling.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back to a caller. Oh, you don't have to really listen closely, because whatever he says, he repeats.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
My name is Joan Kinata from the village of Umata. I've applied for the program in Salapi to help me in my daily commute from Umata to Manila. Thank you to this administration for the program in Salapi.
The application deadline for program in Salapi has been extended to May 22nd, 2022. For more information, please visit doa.guam.gov. This ad was paid for by the Office of the Governor using government funds.
Now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so the next caller on the line here is Repeat, who wants to talk about political status in the military. Oh, let me turn my iPad off here. Okay, so the next caller. Yeah. So, also, I'm hoping, Repeat, that you can give us a short summary of the Chautauqua you went to at the University of Guam last night. I'll let you choose the order.
It was actually at the theater. The last time we met over at the theater at the museum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was great. We had the first speaker was retired Superior Court Judge and also District Court Magistrate Judge Joaquin Manabusan, and then you had former Governor Carl Gutierrez, who gave you a lot of props there, Uncle Bob, and
Tell me more.
Praise. And then we had Lola Leon Guerrero, and it seemed to be, they disagreed with Lola, but it was a very healthy and respectful conversation. And I did make a comment that, there was a fallacy back when the Constitution, because for the benefit of the listeners, the subject last night was a Guam Constitution. And Lola's, I guess, contribution to the panel was why a Guam Constitution would be counter to self-determination. Well, I commented that actually that is disingenuous and a false argument because the version of the Constitution that was approved by President Carter and then not acted upon by Congress actually didn't have the allegatory language in it. It slipped by the Congress. Well, you can't really say it slipped by the Congress, but they just didn't act on it. And if we would have ratified it, we would have had a Constitution that didn't have the required allegatory language in it. So when the Virgin Islands went to try to do it, Congress had learned their lesson from what Guam did, and then that's why the Virgin Islands has fell 5 times, right? But anyways, that's one issue. So the argument back then was we can't do this because it gives away our sovereignty. Well, that version of the Constitution that was approved by the president and not acted upon by Congress did not have the allegatory language in it. So we miss our chance to have that version of a Constitution. The second argument that is has a legal or logical problem with it is that having a Constitution would take us out from the list of non-self-governing territories. Well, that's not true because we see other territories that do have Constitution that are still on the list. And what matters is not whether or not they have a Constitution, but whether or not they went through any kind of act of self-determination, like the CNMI, for instance. They were part of the trust territory, and they went through the decolonization process when Palau chose independence, Marshall Islands chose independence, Federated States of Micronesia decided to be freely associated states, and then CNMI decided to become a commonwealth, in the American family. And so that act of what the CNMI did is what delisted them from the list of non-self-governing territories, not the fact that they have a covenant which is, equivalent or an analog to a constitution. And so that's the point that I brought up. And then Lola's arguments always circled back to, well, if we give up sovereignty, then that's it. We're done. We don't get to choose self-determination, and it's not true sovereignty. If you're subject to another sovereign. But that again is not a valid argument because in a republic you're going to have the federal government that is the supreme sovereign, and then you're going to have subordinate sovereigns, and then we have also territories that are granted some sort of quasi-sovereignty, and that's where we're at, right? So you have the United States, the 50 states have state sovereignty. We have territorial sovereignty, but that is granted by the federal government. So anyways, there was other lively discussions about what a constitution would mean for Guam, what kind of benefits or rights. And, you know, that it shows to me that a lot of people misunderstand what a constitution actually is, what the document does. The document forms the government, and it doesn't give you positive rights. There's only negative rights in the sense that it protects citizens against government overreach. And there are people asking, well, what kind of rights is it going to give us? What kind of benefits is it going to give us? You don't get that from the Constitution.
How much Kool-Aid did Lola drink during the presentation?
None. She kept pushing it. She kept pushing back. She stood her ground, you know. And there's a lot of people that ascribe or subscribe to that train of thought, you know. And I told her point blank that I believe that self-determination needs to happen, but I don't believe that having a Guam constitution derails or detracts from the self-determination effort.
And of course, Bavacqua has written numerous columns about why we should not adopt a constitution, picking up most of the things that you're ascribing to Lola. So I suspect he probably picked it up from her.
They're co-chairs of the Independence Task Force, you know. I do believe that there needs to be self-determination, but I also believe that Guam should have a constitution. I believe that we missed out the last 45 years that we could have had a constitution. You know, the benefit that could have come from a constitution, of course, is not having to go to Washington, you know, to genuflect every time we need the Organic Act amended, right? And it would be the local control. But also the other benefit that we missed out on is we could have sculpted a constitution that, like I said before previously on previous shows, that just like some state constitution and some other constitutions we see around the world, there can be an acknowledgement of the indigenous and native inhabitants and add some protections, right? Not necessarily benefits, but protections, as we have seen in other places.
Well, I've mentioned this before, that if you read the Rastaman case, the guy who was using marijuana as part of his religious celebration, and he prevailed at our Supreme Court and was reversed back in the days when you went from the Guam Supreme Court to the appellate division of the when you went to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit and the Guam Supreme Court attempted to say we're acting on a state constitution here, looking at the part of the pre-Mink amendments, part of the Organic Act that established certain rights, and the Ninth Circuit said, no, we're not going to defer to your interpretation of the Organic Act. It's a federal statute. We're better
that's the other benefit.
We're better at interpreting federal statutes than you guys are, so just be quiet. So if we had our own constitution, we could establish principles that exceed the constitutional principles that we're operating under now, if we so desired.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think maybe not everybody would understand exactly what you're talking about, Uncle Bob, but that is very important. It's very important. Basically, you know, we don't have the right or the authority to, as in the Guam Supreme Court, to interpret a federal statute, but we would have the authority and be the final authority in interpreting our own constitution.
Okay, well, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the military and political status in the military. Repeat.
Well, I caught some of what was it Kelly or the previous caller. You know, just to put this out there, for anyone or any state to be independent, size doesn't really matter, although other people would have different opinions. Now, you don't have to have your own money, and you don't have to have a military, right? Those are not requirements to be an independent state. Just to
You
throw
trying
that
to
out
tell us that size doesn't matter?
Yeah,
Well,
sorry, it doesn't matter. But
all right, go ahead.
anyways, getting back to independence and the military, whatever happens in this next couple of generations, I believe that even if we stay status quo, that would be just fine, right? We're not living a bad life right now. We're not Ukraine. We're not the Philippines. We're not, right? But there's always room for improvement. And is the military on Guam, the presence on Guam, and independence, is it mutually exclusive? I don't think so.
No.
But I think that improving on what we have now would be the way to go. I mean, we have been improving on our situation since 1901. Little by little, every decade, there's been small, tiny improvements in the development of Guam's, politics. And you have to just go back and study that. There's a lot of people think that, we haven't done anything or this island hasn't moved anywhere. That is not true. And political change, is like it moves at a glacial pace. It moves little by little. But if you actually study from 1901 to today, we've had a lot of movement. It just happened incrementally and very slowly.
Well, Pete, what I think we should do is we should figure out some sort of a way, some kind of a plebiscite to legitimize our situation with the United States, that we want to remain a part of the American political family. We should take a look at the covenant, and we should talk to Congress about giving us many, if not most, of the same things that the covenant provides for the Northern Marianas. We should ask for things like life tenure for our district judge. There are lots of things that we could probably do if we asked for them in the proper way so that we could improve on the situation that we have right now. But as I said at the beginning of this conversation, the loudest voices are only content to bitch and complain and not to work for positive goals.
Right, and then I'm going to switch my tune and agree with you on that. And this time I'm going to say size does matter, right? Because Guam could get away with it. Puerto Rico, not so much. Because Puerto Rico has a much bigger price tag to ask for the same things that Guam wants. For what Guam benefits to the United States, the price that for the things that we're asking is pretty negligible. But Puerto Rico doesn't have the same kind of military benefit to the United States, and what they're asking for is a very hefty price tag.
And that's why I said we shouldn't be part of this. We're all a colony, all of the territory should stick together, because Puerto Rico just tips the scale so much in the opposite direction that it doesn't help us at all to be aligned with Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it's like you're in a relay race and Puerto Rico's the big fat kid that's holding you guys back.
Hey, great talking to you. Great talking to you, Dick. Pete.
All right.
I got confused there for a minute. So long, Free Pete. Okay. Okay, we got Frenchie coming up next. Go ahead, Frenchie. Tell me about the disease of wokeness.
Yeah, well, the last few days we've been talking a lot about the symptoms, which are, all the things we see about women wanted to be men, men wanted to be women, using the right pronouns and all those things. This is just the symptoms of the disease. And I think we are living at a time where we are coming to an end of an order that has been working for us since the 18th century. Before the 18th century, you had the famous French philosopher and mathematician René Descartes, who said, "Cogito ergo sum," I think therefore I am, which is the beginning of the philosophers of the 18th century approach about individual rationale, which marks modernity as we know it. Before that, the Greek, the Latin, the Confucians, before the Christians, all had set of values that regulated their societies. And starting with the 18th centuries, and we see actually in the U.S., we see the fighting of that concept. And then in France, with the French Revolution, we see the necessity to destroy that old concept and replace it by the concept of modernity. Now, modernity, which started in the 18th century, basically gave us three byproducts. One is capitalism, the other one was communism, and the third one was fascism. And the fascism is the first one that fell, and that was destroyed first. Communism basically disappeared with the fall of the USSR, even though it still stays alive in countries like North Korea and China, but it basically disappeared from the Western world after '89. And capitalism, it's still alive, but it is very thick, and it is failing to renew itself. Capitalism has morphed into crony capitalism, which only escape out is to become bigger every time, which leads us to push for globalism. And in order for globalism to be successful, we need to create chaos around us. And if you see the policies of the United States for the last 20 years or more, we are creating chaos everywhere we go under the pretense that we are bringing democracy, but we are not. We are bringing chaos in order to destroy and destabilize other countries around us in order to be able to survive. And you have a lot of people that have been thinking about this. Where are we going? Because crony capitalism and globalism, the way it is progressing, is basically the marriage of modernity technology and the modernity of ideology. And the quintessential modernity of ideology is what we call wokeness, which is the ultimate tool of destruction. It follows the 1960s French philosophers like Lacan and all that, who were advocating deconstruction. And wokeness is the final work of deconstruction. And basically, in order to move on to the next step, which is transhumanism, which is a very dangerous slope, this is what our people like Fukuyama, for example, in '89 declared it was the end of history. It is not. You have also other ways, and we are seeing right now a conflict in Ukraine which pitch two main philosophies, one against the other. One is globalism, which is represented by the West and NATO, and what we are selling is wokeism. It is GLBTQ rights. It is deconstruction of the family, the eradication of religion because it's not modern enough, and we're seeing it in some of the principal religions, including the Catholic religion, which are basically advocating of getting more modern and getting away with some of the core philosophy of said religion. And so we see that there is a movement to get rid of all that, and it's the wokeness movement. There are several philosophers, I just read a few of them. Alexander Dugin, which is a Russian, Julius Evola, who died, but he was an Italian philosopher, and then Michéa in France, who is kind of an analyst, chronicle type of person, but who goes along those things. And basically, what Dugin is advocating is Uranism, which is a return to tradition while accepting the technicity of modernity. So you cannot get away with throwing away modernity. Our world has evolved technologically wise, but what they are saying is that it needs to be channeled within the context of tradition and religious values, so that you do not have things like abortions and getting rid of older people and everything, or putting people in lockdowns for months at a time. That religion and tradition should give a set of guidelines to that modern world to continue improving the life of people through modernity in the technological sense, but not by throwing away the moral and the religious side of it, only by putting that modernity within a set of moral guidelines. And it is very important. And this is basically what the Russians have been doing for 20 years. And now it comes at loggerhead with us, because we are advocating that wokeness, which is the only way crony capitalism can survive in a global world. So everything else is incidental to those major change of our world. And I think that modernity is coming to an end. And the big question is going to be, are we going to go towards transhumanism like the woke people want us to do? Or are we going to say enough is enough? Let's put some guidelines around what is a man, what is a woman, what is science allowed to do and not allowed to do? What is moral and what is immoral? What is correct and what is evil? And so that was my reflection today on what's going on around us, and I think we needed to kind of see that a little bit. It's a little short to develop those ideas in a few minutes, but I think it's important to put it in the context of all the things that are being rammed down our throats in the last few years, thanks to war, thanks to pandemics and everything, and making people fearful to accept things that are going against their own interest. So that's my reflection today.
Yeah, well put, Frenchie. And of course, in times like this, our salvation, using the word in both senses of the word, ought to be our Catholic religion, but of course it isn't.
Yeah. Well, I wrote an article today. I encourage you to read it.
I did.
About the shepherds not doing their job. So, and I think it's something we need to call to the attention of every good-will person, that this is necessary, that we make a stand. And
my understanding is that the Catholic Church does not allow secular rulers to determine the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. Except in China.
Unless you're China.
Yeah.
But we have a pope who used to be a Peronist, and I would invite people to go and look what Peron was standing for from World War II until the 1960s. It's a very dangerous philosophy, and our pope was raised into that philosophy, and in the philosophy of I'm having a senior moment, of changing religious approach to help the poor and everything, rather than following the guidance of Christ. So that is also very important. What Putin has done, which is very interesting, because he comes from the KGB, which was a Stalinist organization. And he has put religion in this country back at the center of this country, while at the same time pursuing modernity, but within some guidelines. And I think what he's proposing to a lot of people, and despite what our propaganda is saying, more than 2/3 of the countries around the world are paying very close attention about his struggle with the West, because they understand exactly what it is. And when you see the reactions of very large country like India right now, they understand very much what the stakes are. And people are watching with great interest at what is happening. While our elected people in D.C. are drumming for war, and while they are supposed to be the adults in the room, at least they told us when they got rid of Trump, and they are acting like ill-tempered teenagers and pushing for these woke theories that are extremely destructive.
You're absolutely right, Frenchie, and thank you so much. It's very enlightening. It's always a pleasure to listen to you talk in terms what I'm going to label as classical terms. Good job. Got to take a short break, and we'll see you later.
What you do, have a great day.
Thank you.
Check out the newest hydro and garden center to hit Guam, Crop King Hydro. We have a huge selection of plant nutrients, soils, hydroponic mediums, organic pest control pumps, plant support, tools, and so much more. Call 635-4769. 635-GROW. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 6 at the Dededo Satina Mall, right across from Payless and Paradise Fitness. For whatever you grow, think Crop King Hydro. Crop King Hydro.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. For others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Yeah, it's too bad that we couldn't have Don't Cry For Me, Argentina as our bumper music, Jose. Okay, so back to the card. Actually, just starting on the card, Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I think everybody pretty much understands what's going on there. I was at a SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management conference yesterday, and they had a really nice breakfast there, and they had just plain old steamed rice on the line. And when I asked when I asked people what color the rice was, they looked at me like, "What are you talking about, Bob?" And so there were a couple of people there that were not tailgaters. But it was a presentation by Vince Camacho, a lawyer who had been to the SHRM National Convention or conference and came back and updated us on some of the new regulations coming out of Washington, EEO, National Labor Relations Board. It's pretty scary. I'm going to see if I can pull some of it together and put it on the show. It's pretty scary. But after I listened to it for quite a while, they opened the floor to questions. And I asked for the mic, and I got the mic, and I said, Vince, have they made any regulations in Washington to restrict the reach of tall tales? And Vince said no, and if they did, it'd be discrimination. So that was probably the high point of the meeting for some of the people. Okay, Public Law 36-34. I'm not going to dwell on Paul Zerzan today. I think everybody got the point, has gotten the point. But I find that the classified sections of the paper are extremely interesting since Public Law 36-34 came along. As an example, I'm looking at the meeting for the Solid Waste Authority that's scheduled on May 19th. It's going to be conducted by Zoom, so I'm not going to pay much attention to it. But item number 10 on the agenda is public forum. And under that, we have A, Ken Leon Guerrero. So, and I mentioned the last time, a week or so ago, maybe longer, that Dave Sablon was at that same slot on the agenda. So apparently I'm getting my wish. We're having some lively discussions about waste to energy. As I mentioned yesterday, I've only entered an interlocutory ruling on this controversy. That is, I want to hear more from everybody, sides, no sides, whatever. But I have not ruled just yet. So a couple of pretty good advocates, Ken and Dave, should make it quite interesting. But anyhow, that's what's coming up at the next Solid Waste Commission meeting. And then I went to the Environmental Protection Agency having a meeting on Thursday, May 19th at 4 p.m. And one of the items on their agenda is notices of violation. Primos Heavy Equipment, and then Samsung ENC America, Inc. Now, what violation would that be? That would be the Sausage and Valley violation. So I don't know if I mentioned this when we were talking about the settlement that the Attorney General entered into. That did not preclude a hefty fine, by the Environmental Protection Agency against Samsung, at least as far as I know. And that, of course, would be the reason that Samsung would want to make sure that the settlement agreement contained a clause that said no admission of guilt here. That would make it a little difficult for them in front of the EPA. And then I'm looking at the Chamorro Land Trust conference room. Boy, something has happened there. It's like the place is on fire, and they've got all these fires they want to put out. For instance, item number 4, CLTC strategic plan progress. A, improving our way of conducting business. 1, reorganize processes. 2, advance information technology. B, improve stewardship. Improving the integrity of programs. Well, that won't be hard. When you're laying on the floor, the only way to go is up. 2, improving accountability and performance, same thing. C, create clean, safe, and thriving neighborhoods. 1, registering property. Now, I think what they're talking about there is going through the land registration mechanism for all of the leaseholds that they have granted. That is going to be a gigantic undertaking. 2, land survey. 3, infrastructure. Okay, let's break for the halftime show, and I'll come back to the Land Trust Commission after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Democrats say they'll keep fighting. I'm Pam Puso, Fox News.
Sadly, the Senate failed to stand in defense of a woman's right to make decisions about her own body.
Vice President Kamala Harris, after a vote to codify Roe v. Wade, was blocked by Senate Republicans.
In addition to 9 months of functional abortion on demand, the Democrats' extreme bill would roll back basic health and safety regulations.
Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. There were more protests outside the homes of Supreme Court justices on Wednesday as a new survey finds that 52% of Americans disapprove of the job the High Court is doing.
The Monmouth University poll out of New Jersey shows 57% of respondents say Roe v. Wade, which has guided abortion policy for decades, should be left as is by the Supreme Court. Only 36% say it should be re-examined.
Fox's Gernal Scott. A brush fire burning out of control in Southern California has scorched a number of multi-million-dollar mansions. Officials say about 200 acres have been charred in the Laguna Hills area. The fire is being fueled by sea breezes and tinder-dry vegetation. No injuries reported. The largest wildfire in the country is burning in northern New Mexico, and it's pushing more people out of their homes.
The impact directly on citizens is dire. We have elders, extremely poor individuals, no homeowners insurance in many cases, nowhere to go.
State lawmaker Roger Montoya. To Ukraine, where neither side is making any real gains, Russian forces continue to pound the southern city of Mariupol with airstrikes. In the east, Ukrainian troops have managed to repel a number of attacks. America's listening to Fox News.
When the pandemic first started and we had no idea that it was going to affect our business till March of 2020. Orders from public health, roadblocks, restriction. It was a very hard time for me. What really has saved my business is the SBA and the PPP program. I felt keeping the employees was so important because I had faith that my government would help me later, the federal government. We applied and we received 2 PPP loans equaling up to $425,000. That money saved me because it's been 2 years. I think 80 or 90% of the restaurants have closed. The only reason I'm here because of my devoted clientele and the federal government.
Thank you for helping save jobs with federal funds.
Thank you to the federal government for all the federal ARP money.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
It could be a long, hot, and violent summer in Chicago. On Tuesday, 10 people were shot and wounded, and 1 was killed over the span of 6 hours. So far, no arrests have been made. Since the beginning of this year, the city has recorded nearly 200 murders. In New York City, Mayor Eric Adams says the same criminals are repeatedly being released. On Tuesday night, police were involved in a shooting with a suspect who was known to law enforcement.
The shooter, 25-year-old Ramik Smith, shot at officers who returned fire. Smith was killed, 1 officer was wounded, and is expected to fully recover. The mayor said Smith is a repeat offender who is free awaiting sentencing for possession of a firearm. He called for an end to revolving door justice.
Fox's David Lee Miller. Separately, Mayor Adams is calling on the White House to yank the federal firearms license of a Nevada company that sells parts for ghost guns, which are weapons without serial numbers. He claims the company has violated federal gun laws, including background checks for buyers. An apology from German airline Lufthansa to a group of Orthodox Jewish passengers. Earlier this month, the entire group was barred from a flight in Frankfurt after some of them refused to wear masks. The airline says it has zero tolerance for racism, anti-Semitism, and discrimination of any type. A major investment for Southwest Airlines.
The carrier will be forking over $2 billion to enhance the flying experience for passengers, promising faster internet service, power outlets at every seat on new planes, and larger overhead bins for carry-ons. Also later this month, Southwest expects to roll out a 4th fare category designed to fill a gap between its cheapest fares and its mid-price ticket. Southwest has always offered fewer amenities than its bigger rivals.
Fox's Hillary Barsky. I'm Pam Huso, and this is Fox News.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender. Credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Half-a-day. My name is Jerome Kinata from the village of Umata. I've applied for the program in Salapi to help me in my daily commute from Umata to Manila. Thank you to this administration for the program in Salapi.
The application deadline for Program in Salapi has been extended to May 22nd, 2022. For more information, please visit doa.guam.gov. This ad was paid for by the Office of the Governor using government funds.
Okay, so here we are back on Tall Tales. Where did I leave off just before the break here, Jose?
Ed Frenchie, you were talking about, yeah, we had a lot of good calls.
Oh, I remember. I was talking about the Chamorro Land Trust Commission's next meeting.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's really ambitious. There's a financial report, A, revenue collection, B, budget request, 6, an agency report, 7, guest agency presentation, Guam Housing and Department of Land Management, and then 8, 1995 application status update. Now, nobody except me has come out and with the really bad news. And I don't expect the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to do it either. And the bad news is that all of you folks that signed up in 1995 that never got leases, and you're still thinking, well, my name will come up sooner or later, are in for a shock because the government settled a suit with the Justice Department. The basis of the suit was that the Chamorro Land Trust lease program was unconstitutional as being racially discriminatory.
Denied.
So the settlement says you can still call it the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. You can still give leaseholds, but you can't do it because somebody's Chamorro. In order to be eligible for a lease, you have to come forward and show that you or your ancestors own property that was taken by the United States government in eminent domain between 1945 and 1968. Or that you used land like that. If you can't, you don't get a lease. So this is going to be a tremendous undertaking for a lot of folks because you're going to have to come up with records. And we ran a story here about the somebody from a claimant being sent from the Land Trust Commission to the Ancestral Lands Commission because that's where all of the records that you need are located. And then there was a companion story that said that a lot of the records had holes in them because it had been eaten by termites.
Literally holes.
Literally holes through the pages of paper. So this is not going to be, it's not going to work very well. It's going to be a lot of angry people when this truth finally comes to light.
If I can connect this to the conversation earlier by repeat,
Certainly.
he was talking about, you both were talking about Constitution for Guam.
Yeah.
Would language that he was talking about with provisions for indigenous people be able to rectify something like this, or to talk about something like this?
I don't think so, and I'm not sure I know exactly what he's talking about.
Well, the only thing I can think of is how CNMI has that provision for landowners to be Chamorro, right?
Northern Marianas descent, either Chamorro or Carolinian.
Yeah. And then, of course, American Samoa has a different status for their citizenship. It's called nationalists, and they have something similar too as far as owning property,
land tenure, and their upper house of their legislature. But with respect to the CNMI, the Constitution is enabled by the covenant between the United States and the Northern Mariana Islands, and as Pete pointed out, it's kind of analogous to a treaty between independent states. So just putting it into a constitution probably wouldn't save it from constitutional challenge. Now, and I haven't done a whole lot of thinking about it or researching, but I can tell you this: there's an old case called Takahashi versus Fish and Game Commission that said that states could charge out-of-state residents more for fishing and hunting licenses than in-state residents. So maybe Pete is thinking about something like that. But I think that those who favor the Chamorro Land Trust are really fortunate that that settlement was reached, because all of the existing leaseholds were potentially vulnerable as long as that suit pended. And then something else that I think has been overlooked: the fact that the Justice Department settled with the government of Guam doesn't mean that an individual litigator couldn't bring a similar type lawsuit if he had standing, if he couldn't get a lease under the new rules. Okay, so so much for the want-ad section of the paper. I can't imagine somebody wants to talk about hey, of course, who else but? He wants to repeat. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, gosh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
Well, a couple of general comments first about the land trust. You know, what a fiasco it's been. It's a really disservice to the people and the intent and all those people that fought for it to be enforced, because they got it passed. You know, it was fought for in court, and then the execution part just fell apart. But anyways, and it caused all kinds of issues. The other issue, I think, too, is those who have already been issued, a lot of the land is sitting dormant and abandoned. And so I think, and this is an unpopular thought, but it's a practical thought, is that when you issue a lease, you got to make sure someone's pre-qualified to actually do something with the land. You know, I mean, because that's you're really just wasting that lease when you give it to someone that's just going to let it, you know,
turn it into a Tongan plantation.
Right. You know, unless you're going to you know, the CNMI has a Tongan charcoal that they sell. You know, but it's something like $20 a bag. I don't know if I would want to spend that for something that I have in my backyard already. But anyways, with regard to the Guam Constitution possibilities, so if Guam adopted a constitution, then of course we would repeal the Organic Act, subject to the Guam Constitution having a lot of the protections and features of the Organic Act. You know, because you don't want to have two documents governing the same territory. You got to have one or the other. And then that would therefore also allow for, like I said, other states who have carved out protections for indigenous folks.
Can you give me an example?
On top of, okay, so like fishing rights, for example, or you know, potentially a lease program, a trust lease program. You know, they would have to not reinvent, but redo the whole lease program. But they could under Guam Constitution because of our status as an unincorporated territory and because of the insular cases. Oh, by the way, it would allow for us to be just like American Samoa or the CNMI and sort of not fully comply with the U.S. Constitution.
So I think what you're saying then is we adopt a constitution, and if it's blessed by the president and or the Congress, then by default it passes constitutional muster, sort of like some of the anomalies in the Northern Marianas. Am I right on that, Pete?
Right, but the U.S. is not going to bless off on a really radical constitution. They're going to want to make sure at least the fundamental protections are going to be there. But the stuff like from the Mink Amendment and the stuff that was added later to the Organic Act, you know, those could be tweaked. Like, remember, you even point out that the Organic Act originally gave preference, hiring preference, to people of Chamorro descent, right? So legally, theoretically, and also legally, theoretically, you know, we could have something like that. And, you know, it still amazes me that we are able to withstand muster with things like the Chamorro Affairs Program and all that kind of stuff, because those in the States have to be part of, like in Hawaii and Washington, those have to be, they have to find some sort of authority or ability in their constitutions, which they do. But here on Guam, there's no such thing in the Organic Act, but we still do it in practice, and nobody has challenged it.
Dave Davis moved to Arizona.
Yeah, that was going to be his next conquest, right?
Maybe.
All right. That's my 2 cents when Joe raised the question.
Okay, well, I'm glad you called back, Pete. So you always provide good information to us. Thank you, sir. Okay, that was repeating, right? I had a little trouble with his name there for a minute, but anyhow. Next.
Don't repeat.
Next item on the calendar is Clint, as you were first item on the calendar, is Clint versus Mike Mateo. And this gets into residents to weigh in on pot rules. Some residents interested in, and this is from yesterday's Daily News, interested in growing cannabis for sale are concerned that the government's proposed rules and regs are too restrictive, said Senator Clint Rigel, who wrote the April 2019 law which legalized recreational cannabis. Rigel's Committee on Economic Development and Agriculture will hold a public hearing for rules and regs starting at 9 a.m. Thursday. That's the date. I'm going to cover that too. The hearing is one of the final steps before the government can start issuing licenses to cannabis businesses. Eligible adults can possess limited amounts of marijuana in public and grow and consume it at home, but it still is illegal to sell or trade marijuana for anything of value until the rules and regs are in place and the government issues licenses to cultivators, manufacturers, testing facilities, and retail stores. Rigel said everyone is welcome to attend the hearing to comment. Well, that's a relief.
I hope so.
Well, I don't know that the hearing on...
Can we just get a round table?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I wanted to mention this the other day. I'm going to just take a minute here to talk about this idea of, can't we have a round table? Now, a round table, those words have a particular meaning. And if you have a round table, the reason it's called a round table is there is no chairman. It's not a rectangular table with a chairman at one end and the tentago sitting around the table. There's no chairman at a round table meeting. So what we do at the legislature ain't a round table. One, and then two, it's not a place for public participation. You name the people who are to participate in the round table discussion, kind of on an ex officio basis, a particular expertise basis, or something like that. It's not just somebody who happened to wander in the room and didn't have anything else to do, so sat down and started jabbering. So that's what a round table really is. It's not a meeting chaired by the committee of a chairman where everybody comes in and sits down and talks a little bit. Now, this, I think, started back around the 26th legislature, and my sense was that it was an attempt to short-circuit the notice requirements of the open government law. We're not having a public hearing. It's just a round table, so we don't have to spend money on an advertisement. But that's just my sense.
No public record.
Yeah, no minutes to approve, no public record, no record even of who was there and who wasn't there. So people get carried away with this, like, well, let's have a round table. Well, we've never had a round table. Never had a real round table. If you're going to have a round table on the matter of Public Law 293, then the way you'd have to do it, it would be people with particular expertise. You'd want a doctor or two there, right? You would want someone who understood civil litigation, a lawyer, because what the bill would do if it became law, it would create a cause of action in anyone who discovered an illegal abortion.
And I would submit you must know how to joust.
How to joust.
If you want to be a part of the round table.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And of course, if it's going to be a round table, you can't do it in the daytime.
Is alcohol involved? Because they usually are with my round tables.
It's nights of the round table.
Oh, God.
You can't do it in the daytime, Jose. Yeah. And no one presides over the round table held at night. But if there happens to be someone named Arthur seated at the round table, people will treat him like a king.
Well, speaking of things in stone.
Yeah, let me get back to Clint here. All right. Rigel said everyone is welcome to attend the hearing to comment, and his committee will accept written testimony for 10 days after the hearing. Now, this is why I wanted to read this. The rules might be changed before the legislature decides whether to adopt them. No, you can't do that. I've been through this. I've actually submitted testimony. I've sat down with senators and told them the way it works is this. Let's do a little Law and Order notebooks here, Jose. The doctrine of separation of powers says that the legislature makes laws with the approval of the governor or with an override. Legislature makes laws. The executive branch enforces the laws. The judicial branch interprets the laws. But a long time ago, we came up with this idea that the legislature can delegate some of its authority through a real rule-making process. And the way it does that is this. There has to be an enabling statute that says an agency, in order to enact rules, must do the following. And we've got a pretty elaborate statute that says that. Now, the rules that are enacted have to have standards. The legislature has to delegates its authority, but says you got to stay within these standards. The legislature couldn't pass a law that says marijuana will be legal after July 1st. Legislature, as you were, Department of Public Health, to enact rules and regulations dealing with everything. No, you can't do that. You have to specify the standards that the rules will follow, and if you don't, then the rules are subject to challenge by someone who has standing. So that's the first part of it. Now, under our situation, there is a mechanism where an agency develops rules, has to have public hearings, has to have a fiscal note, has to stay within the standards, etc. And when the rules are finished, they are transmitted to the legislature. And they will lie before, term of art there, they will lie before the legislature for 90 days. And if the legislature does absolutely nothing, you don't need much of an imagination for this one. You don't need to be a lawyer to thoroughly understand this provision.
We got a couple of experts already then.
Yeah, the legislature does nothing. At the end of the 90 days, the rules are promulgated. Once they're promulgated, then the governor signs a paper, and they're also listed, or they also go to the compiler of laws, who lists them in the compiler's website in the Guam Administrative Rules section. If you go there, you'll find regulations from a lot of the different agencies. That's how it works. Now, during that 90 days, the legislature is limited to two different possibilities. If the legislature says, yeah, we really like these rules, we don't want to wait for 90 days, therefore we're introducing a bill, we're going to pass that bill, send it to the governor, and the governor signs it, the rules are promulgated. Second possibility, the legislature says, we hate these rules. We just don't like them at all. We are going to disapprove them by statute. Well, can't the legislature change the rules during that 90 days? No. Separation of powers. If you look at the Organic Act, you see the only powers that the legislature has, it appropriates money, it confirms executive appointments, and it enacts statutes. And the way it enacts statutes is pretty clearly spelled out. It doesn't say the legislature can enact rules. So the legislature can't change the rules. What it could do is this. It could introduce a bill that says these rules are no good, try again, but under section 4, 5, 6, and 7, try something like this. It can do that. It can send the rules back to the agency. But the legislature can't change those rules. And of course, the people at the legislature, well, we were the legislature, and that's what the law says. We can do whatever we want to. Well, if the legislature does it, it has no more force than a resolution, because until the governor signs or vetoes a product of the legislature, it's just an interesting piece of paper, and that's all it would be. Whether anybody over there understands this or not, I don't know, but when the commerce begins, anybody who's disappointed, if they try to do this, anybody who's disappointed is going to have a good lawsuit to challenge the rules. Now, I mentioned this when I was talking with Ray the other day. When the Chamorro Land Trust Act was finally picked up after Angel Santos demonstrated down at Adelup, and Mike Phillips went to court and got a writ of mandamus ordering the governor to appoint commissioners. That's how it finally got started. The first thing the commissioners were supposed to do was enact rules and regulations. Well, of course, they didn't do that. So the legislature said, we got to have rules and regulations to get this thing off the ground. So they put together a piece of paper that on the top of it says Paul Berdalio Rules and Regulations. And it laid out, things that look like rules and regulations. And it passed, and the governor signed it, and it was public. It is now Public Law 2338. And if you've heard of it, you could find it, because it's not a rule and regulation. Therefore, it's not in the compiler's website, because it's something the legislature passed into law. And because the legislature didn't codify it in accordance with the rules for additions to the Guam Code Annotated, you can't find it that way either. So unless you really understand oral tradition, and that game about, people sit in a circle and whisper. And
otherwise known as the telephone game? The
telephone game, yeah. If you don't know that, you won't ever find those rules and regulations. And during all of the kerfuffle over the Land Trust Commission, people were talking about, well, the rules and regulations say, and of course nobody could find the rules and regulations. So that's the pitfall of not doing this right. You're going to wind up with just a huge mess over there at the legislature, because you can't change, you can't add to the rules, you can't make rules from where you sit. Okay, going on. Yeah, let's head for Wrigley Field, and then we'll go over to the public hearing.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Today, my name is Jerome Kinata from the village of Umate. I've applied for the program as Lapi to help me in my daily commute from Umate to Manila. Thank you to this administration for the program as Lapi.
The application deadline for Program Salapi has been extended to May 22nd, 2022. For more information, please visit doa.guam.gov. This ad was paid for by the Office of the Governor using government funds.
Okay, here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, world's most beautiful ballpark. Means I only got 2 more innings to go on this episode of Tall Tales. And the Daily News ran a report on this morning's 9 o'clock hearing. It's pretty fast for the Daily News. Usually it takes them 3 days to get a story out. And the title of the article is Cannabis Rules Draw Fire. Guam's recreational cannabis industry could lose to the black market unless the government allows residents to own more than one type of cannabis business, a prospective business owner told lawmakers Thursday morning. At the very least, businesses should be allowed to grow and also manufacture cannabis products. Mike Mateo said during a public hearing on the rules for the island's recreational cannabis industry. That's how the cannabis black market operates. I think it's actually the marijuana black market, isn't it? It's the cannabis industry, but the marijuana black market. That's how the marijuana black market operates, by controlling cultivation, manufacturing, and sale. And legal cannabis businesses need to do the same thing to compete on price, Mateo said. It makes it nearly impossible for me as an entrepreneur to enter the market and sustain reasonable profits. Adding the prohibition is a major deal breaker. As currently written, the rules and regs prohibit owning or having a financial interest in more than one type of cannabis business at the same time. Businesses must be at least 51% owned by a local resident who has lived here at least 3 years. I see lots of constitutional law challenges here. Cannabis Control Board Chairwoman Vanessa Williams. Where have I heard that name before? Vanessa Williams. Now, when Vanessa Williams speaks, people listen. And here's what Vanessa Williams said. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. We might want to open a marijuana business, therefore we couldn't have that child, therefore abortion is in order. Vanessa Williams. Vanessa Williams said vertical integration, owning more than one type of business, cannabis business, was one of the main issues considered by the board as it drafted the rules and regs. Now, I haven't looked at the enabling statute, but does the enabling statute allow for vertical integration, prohibit it, require it, what? She said the board decided that allowing vertical integration could put smaller business owners at a competitive disadvantage and discourage them from participating in the cannabis industry. That could benefit the black markets, he said, adding the situation will be clearer once cannabis businesses start operating. We committed to revisit the issue in terms of permitting vertical integration once the industry starts, Williams said. The legislature's committee on, now that's good too, because, if you start out one way and people invest money and then you change the rules after you see how it works, it doesn't work very well either. The legislature's Committee on Economic Development and Agriculture held a public hearing for the proposed rules Thursday, which is one of the final steps before the rules are final and the government can begin issuing licenses to cannabis businesses. Committee Chair Senator Clint Rigel said the rules and regs after the public hearing must be considered by lawmakers during the legislative session. Recreational cannabis has been legal in Guam since April 2019. Talking a little bit here about what you can do legally now. No cannabis products can be sold unless they are tested by a lab. So you can grow your own, you can give it away, you can smoke it, but you can't sell it. Farmer Ernie Wustig, who sometimes I think is the only farmer on the island, sweet corn, Ernie Wustig.
Up in Jigo?
Up in Jigo. Farmer Ernie Wustig told senators he considered growing cannabis to supplement the income from his farm, but decided against it because of the effort it would require. Wustig said he objects to the rules and regs which allow cannabis growers to use only organically produced nutrients. I don't think that's necessary, Wustig said. I've been farming for about 50 years, and I see that commercial fertilizer is very helpful to the farmers. There's nothing wrong. So why does the Cannabis Board want to regulate how to grow the crop? Now, I remember the Deputy Director of Agriculture, a guy named, what is his name? Adrian Cruz, made an impassioned plea that we should use manure to grow for cannabis. Yeah.
Things that waft, Alex.
Yeah. Yeah, so as I think I used the power vested in me as the host of Tall Tales to appoint him Deputy Director for Manure at the Department of Agriculture. To make it organically grown is just an added cost, Wustig said. It's another hurdle. Nathan Bell told lawmakers he's interested in cannabis genetics and seeds, not selling cannabis. The rules and regs don't fully address that issue, he said, noting the section on cannabis seed selection is only 3 sentences long. Where are you going to get your seeds? Good question. The rules state federal law prohibits cannabis seeds and material from being imported, so seeds and tissue cultures may be locally sourced. As someone who locally is working on that just as a hobby, it seems like maybe we should have put a little more thought into that, Bill said. Yeah. Seeds are a difficult issue, said Rigel, who wrote the recreational cannabis law. According to federal law, you can't import any cannabis products from off-island. Because of that, the idea was to allow it so that whatever cannabis is already here, you can cultivate whatever seeds are here, whatever genetics are here. Banking problem. One unresolved issue unrelated to the rules and regs is how to handle the money generated by Guam's cannabis businesses. At this time, no local bank is willing to accept cannabis-related money, which means the government of Guam can't deposit the fees and taxes collected from cannabis businesses, Williams said. The 15% excise tax on cannabis sales is supposed to be GovGuam's primary funding source to pay for industry monitoring and regulation. Williams said the Cannabis Board can't require banks to accept cannabis-related money, but banks might be willing to do so if the market is sufficiently regulated and the banks have access to licensee information. She said the Department of Public Health and Social Services, which is in charge of the, quote, seed to sale tracking system for the cannabis industry, has been giving presentations to banks about how the system will operate. This is ongoing, Williams said. We're continuing to address the issues. The director of the Department of Administration is well aware and is working diligently with the Department of Rev Tax and the board. We're trying to keep this paramount and a priority issue for all decision makers. You know, it was never a good idea from the beginning. It's still not a good idea. It's not going to be a good idea so long as it's Schedule I on the federal narcotics regs. It's against the law of the nation, so you're going to keep running into these problems.
And no testing.
No testing, yeah. All right, let's see who wants to talk about marijuana here. It's none other than another Joe, the hobby of cultivating marijuana. Go ahead, another Joe.
Hey, Bob, they call it the cannabis industry, but maybe they should have called it the cannabis hobby bill. But anyway, it just seems like it's a smoke screen, a cover for this. You see the black market.
It's just a smoke screen. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of butted in with that one, another Joe.
Well, anyway,
your ashes, your presentation's kind of turning to ashes on you, another Joe.
Yeah, it's exploding. It's collapsing all around me. So, yeah, I think that when there's a majority Republican, 37 of the Guam legislature, they need to have a square table, not a round table, a square table, and determine how much the Guam wants to keep throwing was a good money after bad in this. How much time we need to keep spending on this? The way I look at it is, as long as the people who have chronic conditions like epilepsy, you know, where they have seizures, painful symptoms, as long as they can get a supply, which is supposedly small amounts, it shouldn't be a problem. So they already just decriminalized small amounts. As long as we maintain that, we should have to keep spending money, throwing money at this. What do you think about?
We did the decriminalization, and
that's right.
And so a person who needs it for real medical needs, I suspect a relatively resourceful person on a small, friendly island like this would be able to get his medicinal marijuana. But I agree with you. We're throwing good money after bad. I wonder how much, if we were to pay everybody that's been involved in this a minimum wage, how much money we've burned up already on this thing. And we're not getting any closer to the finish line.
Okay, good, Bob. Thanks for your time. I'll keep listening.
Okay, good talking to you, another Joe. Yeah, it's time to head for Churchill Downs.
Hafa. I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many jobs. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds. It kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Hafa. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, heading down the home stretch for Tall Tales. A couple more furlongs, and I'll be crossing the finish line. Had an interesting post here from Bonnie Suba. Bonnie Suba says, let's see here. Bonnie Suba posts a lot. Well, anyhow, I can't find the post, but Bonnie Suba brought to our attention that Chucky brought the federal legislation, the federal pro-abortion legislation before the Senate, and it failed. It failed 51 to 49. And, of course, I've been following that. And it was 51, it was 50 Republicans, and Joe Manchin, the last blue dog Democrat in the world, right? Joe Manchin said, I'm not going to vote for that. He said it way back from the get-go he wasn't going to vote for it because it goes much farther even than Roe did. So he's not going to vote for it. But Chucky says, I'm going to do this even though I know I don't have the votes because I want to smoke out a couple people. Susan Collins from Maine, and Barbara
from Alaska.
Yeah, Murkowski from Alaska.
Well, that's the problem with this political. Well, they're all political moves, but this mindset of codifying abortion. They don't even know what language they're putting in there. They just want to codify abortion because the reason why Murkowski and I can't remember the other one, Collins wouldn't vote for it, otherwise they are pro-choice, so to speak, is because it legalizes everything, including third trimester. I believe in partial birth. There's no limits.
Yeah, well, they voted for it this time around, and everybody in the Senate and everybody who's been paying attention knew that it wouldn't pass because Manchin said he wouldn't vote for it. But what Chucky Schumer wanted to do was to make the two so-called liberal Republicans come out and vote against it, so that people running for the Senate from those states could come out and bash him as anti-abortionists.
I hope they clarify the specifics of what they're attempting to pass, and I think that's what changes it. But of course, they're not going to mention anything.
No.
They're just going to generalize everything.
And then by making them vote for it, he actually is doing the Republicans a favor because the Republican candidates in those states, are going to gain some ground on that. But I've mentioned this rule of politics before. What the Democrats are saying, we're going to codify Roe versus Wade. Don't worry, even if the Supreme Court overturns it, we're going to codify it. We're going to make it federal law. And of course, all of the pro-abortion, hooray for Chucky, hooray for the Congress, boo for the Supreme Court. Now, first of all, I don't see where Congress has the authority to make such a law. And of course, you can put words on paper. You could pass both houses. The president can sign, and the day that it goes into effect, somebody can beat it over to the district court with a petition for an injunction. This happens all the time. But one of the rules in politics is that an easily understood argument that's wrong oftentimes has a much better chance of going forward than a complicated argument that's right, that's correct. So, by coming out and saying, well, we're going to federalize Roe, probably has a lot of support out in the pro-abortion community, but then, of course, they're already supporting the Democrats. So how does it help anybody? Doesn't help at all. Okay, but good observation, Bonnie. I'm glad Bonnie really keeps track of the national news, helps us out in that regard. Okay, Ethics Commission versus the Open Government Law. This is a story that came out a few days ago on May 2nd. As were GVB issue not on Ethics Commission's agenda. Officials said it is being reviewed. Accusations lodged in March by Guam Visitors Bureau President Carl Gutierrez against his agency's board are under review by the Ethics Commission, but that's essentially all that can be said about the matter, according to Ethics Commission Executive Director Jesse Kanga. The Commission did not discuss the issue during its meeting on March 31, as it was not part of the meeting agenda at that time. Kanga previously said that they would be scheduling another meeting to discuss the case, but the issue was not on the April 22 meeting agenda either. Although there were a number of issues listed under closed proceedings. These issues consisted of 6 issues that were part of the Commission's March meeting agenda, plus 4 new cases. Kanga said he could not comment on whether the GVB proceedings cases. A sentence ended too soon. The GVB matter is not one that can be discussed publicly while it's under review by the Commission, Kanga told the Daily Post. During the GVB meeting on March 24, Gutierrez accused GVB board members of violating the open government law by meeting in private and of being unethical for voting on programs that benefit their businesses. He lodged another accusation during the April meeting after a motion to approve a third quarter marketing budget of over $400,000 for Taiwan market failed to pass. Gutierrez said he believed it was a political thing against Taiwan. GVB board director Akiro Tani and others denied that was the case. So the Ethics Commission now meets. First of all, it was a private meeting. That's how the newspaper reported it. And now they are billing these meetings as closed proceedings. There's nothing in the organic statute for the Ethics Commission, nothing in the open government law that allows them to hold closed sessions. Possibly they could bring themselves in under the provisions dealing with executive sessions, but if they're taking counsel into those meetings, which I can't understand why they would have counsel if he doesn't get involved in the threshold matters of these complaints, then there are a lot of hoops that they have to jump through. And if they don't, then everything they do is void. So I'm going to put on my great Karnak headdress here. Judgments from the court. People challenging decisions of the Ethics Commission because they didn't follow the open government law. I can't see it going down any other way.
What an ironic decision that would be.
Yeah. I'm tempted to write a complaint to the Ethics Commission asking them to rule on whether they're not following the open government law is an ethical violation.
They'll be going around circles chasing their tail.
Probably. Okay, next item on the card is Troy versus Neocats. And I don't think I'll have time to finish this, but I can at least start it. This is from Candid News. And it says, letter shows cover-up by Apparon's Neo-run court. And by court, it doesn't mean the place where the guy with the black robe sits. It means more like what a king is surrounded by, like the Red Queen in her court. Earlier in the year, my dad died, and we had our first and only argument. I know I had made a mistake as a son, and in that sense disrespected my father growing up. At this time, it was different. I outwardly disrespected him by challenging his affiliation with the Neo-Catechumenal Way, a sect of the Roman Catholic Church. I think I went through this before, didn't I?
Yeah, he has. There's been a couple of letters. I don't know if he did this one.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to skip over part of it and get down here to Wadesman. So Troy tells about an experience he had, how he went to proper authorities and told them about the bad experience. And this is what he says: imagine my disgust when a source of information leaked to me on February 27, 2015 letter from the Archbishop of Brisbane, Mark Coleridge, to then Archbishop Anthony Apron about a certain priest, Father John Howard Wadeson. Yeah. Wadeson was the subject of local news reports in 2014 and 15 after the survivors network of those abused by priests exposed unsettled allegations Wadeson had molested children within the Archdiocese of L.A. from 1970s to the 90s. Apron then incarnated him as a priest on Guam in 2000. The Archbishop of Agana later admitted under pressure it was aware of the allegations against Wadeson at the time he was accepted into Guam churches to be around children. When the snap news hit in 2014, Apron's archdiocese sent Wadeson away to San Francisco, according to several news reports. The Archdiocese of Agana has a policy regarding sexual misconduct and sexual harassment and takes these matters very seriously, Archdiocese spokesman Tony Diaz said in July 2014. Despite Diaz's rhetoric, and by the way, Diaz remains mouthpiece for the Archdiocese of Agana, sometime after July 2014 and before February 27, 2015, the Archdiocese continued to cover for Wadeson. According to Archbishop Coleridge of Brisbane, Apron's Vicar General at the time, Monsignor David C. Kitagwa, this would be Kitagwa, Monsignor Kitagwa the Younger, not Monsignor Kitagwa, the elder who has passed away. May he rest in peace. All Monsignor Kitagwas are not created equal.
And both are no longer here on Guam.
Exactly. For completely different reasons. So Kitagwa the Younger wrote saying that Wadeson was a priest in good standing in the Archdiocese of Guam. The signed letter provides further proof of yet another accused predator receiving refuge in Apron's court and political cover by the way to move about throughout the world to continue to have access to innocent children. Wadeson certainly was not the first or the last from the way to receive such courtesy at the expense of a parent's worst fear about their children. And despite Mr. Diaz's July 14 comments that the Archdiocese has a policy of regarding sexual misconduct and takes matters very seriously, he ended up confirming in April of the following year that Wadeson had been restored back to Guam as a priest. According to the website, Wadeson remains under Archdiocese as a retired priest who lives off-island. It is unknown whether Guam's Catholic community continues to pay Wadeson's salary. Okay, here we are at the end of the show, and it's time for me, once again, to show that famous card and shout into the microphone, "Let's go, Brandon!" See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Burning unchecked in Southern California. I'm Pam Huso, Fox News. A brush fire just south of Los Angeles is destroying multi-million-dollar homes as it climbs the cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean.
We are estimating somewhere in the area of potentially 20 plus.
Brian Fennessy is the chief of the Orange County Fire Authority. No one has been hurt. It's unknown what caused the fire. Utility crews are busy in the Minneapolis area. Tens of thousands of customers lost power as severe thunderstorms rolled through. More panic at the grocery store as parents find bare shelves in the baby aisle.
Baby formula is increasingly hard to find on shelves or online, so much so that some parents are seeking to trade formula for diapers or making the decision instead to breastfeed if they are able. According to the retail tracking company Data Assembly, the out-of-stock rate for baby formula shot up to 43% this month compared to just under 5% last May.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt. Congress could hold hearings on the shortage. Abortion rights advocates returned to the homes of Supreme Court justices to protest.
They're calling it peaceful protests, but the fact is we have a law against intimidating judges and justices, and it's on the books for a good reason.
House Republican Darrell Issa. Demonstrators are angry that the court has signaled it could overturn Roe v. Wade. On Wednesday, Senate Democrats tried to codify abortion rights but couldn't muster enough votes. As the war wears on between Russia and Ukraine, the leaders of Finland have announced their support for joining NATO. NATO allies expect Finland and neighboring Sweden to be granted membership quickly. America's listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Greg Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day. Featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. New from the Fox News Podcasts Network, Dana Perino, co-host of the 5 and America's Newsroom on Fox News Channel, returns to the world of audio with a new limited-time podcast, Everything Will Be Okay with Dana Perino. Building off the success of her best-selling book of the same name, Dana provides an unequaled brand of advice built on real-life experience and interviews experts and individuals that make a difference in the lives of others. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
The FBI has been called in to help investigate a shooting inside a Dallas hair salon. Police say a man entered the beauty parlor on Wednesday, shouted something, and then opened fire, injuring 3 women. According to Fox 4, the salon is located in an area with mostly Asian-owned businesses. The gunman is still being sought. A big surprise in South Florida stemming from the deadly collapse of a condominium tower.
Victims and survivors of the Surfside condo collapse have reached a settlement with insurance companies, developers, contractors, and engineers for $997 million. An attorney said the amount could go higher than $1 billion if they reach an agreement with one additional company. 98 people were killed when the Champlain Towers South condo collapsed last June. Miami-Dade County Judge Michael Hansen said he was shocked by this result, saying what has been done for the victims of this tragedy is remarkable and far in excess of what he anticipated. It comes after a hearing earlier this year in which the judge approved a smaller settlement over the property losses, but the loss of life had not been addressed until now. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
More than 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea says it's confirmed its first coronavirus infection linked to the Omicron variant. In response, the country is raising its virus preventive measures to maximum levels. South Korea is offering the North humanitarian assistance. China remains committed to its zero COVID policy despite its paralyzing effects.
In Shanghai, there are still more than 2 million people who remained trapped in their homes. The WHO says that this tactic is not sustainable. Among the main concerns are the lack of food for people who are unable to get out and get groceries.
Fox's Alex Hogan. Thousands of people have been forced to quarantine at isolation centers. Pam Puso, Fox News.
Hey,
Hey there, folks. It's me, KFC's Extra Crispy Colonel. My KFC Extra Crispy Chicken is freshly double breaded and fried to a luxurious, mouth-watering bronze. You see, Extra Crispy KFC Chicken isn't just a product, it's a lifestyle.
And for a limited time, KFC's delicious egg tarts are back. Pick up your KFC Extra Crispy Chicken meal and an order of egg tarts at your favorite KFC today. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
What is dedication?
The thing that drives me every day as a dad is Dariana. We call him Day for short. Every day he's hungry for something, whether it's attention, affection, knowledge. And there's this huge responsibility in making sure that when he's no longer under my wing, that he's a good person. I want him to be able to sit back one day and go, we worked together, we did a good job.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America. This is a special edition of The Sean Hannity Show. America trapped behind enemy lines. Day number 269. Coming up next, our final news roundup and information overload hour.
All right, News Roundup, Information Overload Hour, Sean Hannity Show, 800-941-SEAN, if you want to be a part of the program. If you look at what's happened with our educational system, there was once a landmark study. Ronald Reagan did it in his administration, A Nation at Risk. And that study actually concluded something that's applicable even to this day. And it said what has happened to America's school system, public school system, if it were done by an outside entity of some kind or country of some kind, it would be tantamount to an act of war. That's how bad American schools have been. Maybe if we stuck to reading, writing, arithmetic, science, computers, and get the kids proficient in those topics, then if you really care about gender identity issues, human sexuality classes, I don't know, wokeism 101, whatever it happens to be, how about we use the school buildings and let parents, if they decide maybe they're uncomfortable talking about issues of sexuality with their children, well, maybe, and they want to look at the curriculum, they can have an opt-in system, and if parents want to send their kids after school, after reading, writing, math, science, and computers, they can opt into all the sex ed, gender identity classes that they want to opt into, and then leave the other kids alone and let the parents do their job, which is instill the values they believe is important in their own children. Parents are not potted plants. We saw how effective this was as an issue in Glenn Youngkin's race in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You know, the idea now that we're hearing Joe Biden say that they're all our kids. No, they're not, Joe. They're not your kids. The kids have mommies and daddies, mothers and fathers that produce them, and you're not it. And when we entrust our children to an educational institution, we don't expect them to be brainwashed. Parents don't expect the values they hold near and dear to be contradicted either, just as a side note. Anyway, but that's not how the teachers union sees it. Here's Randy Weingarten, who's the head of the teachers union, saying parental rights bills are the way in which wars
Folks, on set. If you still don't understand NFTs or non-fungible tokens, you are not alone. NFTs are digital things that have been certified as either original or unique, which might build or retain value for collectors. For instance, a piece of digital art could be an NFT, and that's how you know it is original, and anyone else using it as a background on their desktop is possessing only a worthless copy. Instagram this week will allow select creators to distribute NFTs. It's something that Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg teased at his talk at South by Southwest. And while he was excited about the prospect of NFTs on the image-sharing social network, he acknowledged not everybody would be so enthused. NFTs are assured by the use of blockchain tech, not centralized servers like everything else in Zuckerberg's empire. So these coming weeks on Insta is a test to see how well the creators and buyers like it. With Fox on Tech, I'm Eben Brown, Fox News.
This is Fox on Justice. New York state lawmakers have reached an agreement to pull back on the 2019 bail reform law. Judges will now be able to consider new factors when deciding to set bail for a defendant. This includes a history of gun use, violating a protective order, and whether the crime they're accused of would cause serious harm to people. Here's New York Governor Kathy Hochul.
We have to realize there are areas where improvements can and need to be made. And so to the New Yorkers who are concerned about the rise in crime, we have put forth a comprehensive package that, again, achieves continuing the progress we've made in the past to make sure our criminal justice system is fair.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams released a statement saying in part, quote, "While I commend the legislature and the governor for making some progress on public safety, it is also evident that a good deal more work will be needed on this issue." New York City police say crime is up over 36% from last March. Nate Foy, Fox News.
I actually have that cut. Let me play that. That caught my attention as well. Fair trade. I know that he will take seriously the vetting process of anybody appointed to the Supreme Court, and he supports.
Send Dr. Oz to fight for you in the U.S. Senate, and we will make America great again. Thank you, Pennsylvania. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So obviously a big moment in the campaign. Dr. Oz joins us back once again. So we'll know 1 week from today how this primary comes out. Latest polls have you up. It's a very, very tight race with you, and it looks like now Kathy Barnett has come into second place with Dave McCormick now in third place. But it's a close three-way race by any measure. What's your take on why we're at this point? Do you think $40 million in negative ads has played a part in this being a tighter race than maybe I would have expected?
Without question, when they throw that kind of money at you, and President Trump warned me. He said, you're an outsider like I was, and the inside establishment is going to attack you. They're going to go crazy because they know that you won't follow their script. And as he predicted, they showed up. Ads from all angles, manufactured, all the things you said about me, where they said were not true. President Trump specifically in the announcement, he wrote himself, said I was pro-life. They've been attacking that. Strong on crime, the border.
But by the way, you've been pro-life your whole life. Just because you talked medically about when a child is viable does not take away your belief that you believe life begins at conception. If I understand it, that's a belief you've had your whole life.
It is, and I've been very vocal about it. In the actual interview that they claimed that I wasn't pro-life, I said I was pro-life in the actual interview. So, but it doesn't
welcome to the world of politics. It's a blood sport.
Exactly. And also, by the way, he said I would fight for, support, or under siege Second Amendment. The NRA gave me their highest grade for someone who's not served yet in office. Ted Nugent endorsed me, and others who love guns, and yet that's one of the other big knocks. But here's the thing. I actually think Pennsylvanians are smart. They recognize that these ads are